We're a little bit late because we had a challenge with the platform I'm using, but I'll hope to resolve that soon. So thank you for your patience, Danielle, and also for
Thank you.
everyone who joined us at the right time, but we're here. And I'm really excited to share this information with everyone because it is so important. So I've met Danielle through one of her groups, well, her group, and all the chats that she's organizing, which are really interesting. So she's on a mission to put the heart and the soul back in how we look at our finances. So we can have both money well-being and general well-being. The key is to learn how to have a healthy relationship with money. And a lot of people hesitate with that. In order to truly live in sufficiency whilst continuing to build wealth, money management has to cover sorry, has to cover both mindset and smart strategies. So Danielle is a certified financial planner. She's a certified practicing accountant, a certified financial coach, and has extensive background in financial and general psychology. And that combination is something that is amazing because it is very supportive, I believe, for women going through challenges in their life. She has spent decades working with a range of clients, including entrepreneurs who are seeking business growth, also with individuals to address overspending, and couples seeking to change their financial trajectory. So, with a strong focus on financial well-being, Danielle is well placed to work with women in health, healing, and well-being businesses to create a positive ripple effect in the world. So, this sounds amazing. Danielle, what can you tell about your story? How did you get here?
Yeah, so it took me a long time to sort of openly express how all of this started because, for so many of us, our interactions with money start really young. And for me, the concept around money, it did come really young, and it was very clear and obvious because both my parents had very different relationships to money, where $10 in one person's hand would evoke a certain set of reactions, and $10 in another person's hand would evoke another set of reactions. So very early on, I was sort of grappling with what is it? Why are they so different around this thing called money? And naturally, when you're trying to understand, you look to external sources for understanding. And the world was telling me that money is objective, that you count money and that tells you how much you have. And then you have choices based on how much you have. And in many ways, I feel fortunate that it was so obvious when I was young that there was a mismatch because I could see that there was a mistruth there. It's not necessarily objective. You might be able to count it. Obviously, I wasn't, articulating it like this when I was a wee little girl, but, all of these things were swirling around in my head. And then I got to about 14 and I thought, what do I want to do with my life? I know it's, how can a 14-year-old be thinking this? But, I guess we put pressure on young children to decide what they want to do really young. And I gave it some thought, and I remember, when you make decisions in life and you just remember that
Yes.
moment.
Yeah.
And I distinctly recall sitting on my bed. I had Post-it notes on my wall. I was like, I could do this, I could do that. And I went, you know what? What's really important to me is helping people with their money. And so that set me on that path of, I went to university, I did the psychology, and I also did the accounting and the finance. And I've got quite a few certifications in there. And I find it fascinating to look at it from so many different angles because there is, in that intro you mentioned about smart strategies. but also how you see money and how you interact with money. So they're both important and they're both interrelated. So it's
But
just progression.
I like what you said about at that very young age to see how people react differently, and that brings the psychology into it.
Yes.
Because some people, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy that, and others say, oh, well, I'm going to put it aside. You never know. Yes, it's fascinating. So that's how you married your qualifications with psychology and finance from that very young age. And how does it work now to bring the two together?
It's actually it's really nice for me that it feels like the rest of the world is catching up. Because you learn these lessons so young and you can see what's going on, and I think maybe that is the beauty of when you're so young, is you question things, whereas if you're not in a position to question it, you accept it. And now I see there's so much more acceptance that there is this whole other side to money that determines our outcomes. And it's not saying anybody's wrong, really. Your worldview is wrong, because there are different things that will influence, like my grandfather, the more I hear about their story of the depression, that, he was born in the early depression and he grew up. And I know that his mother sold her wedding ring to buy shoes for the boys. And I saw how that influenced the decisions he made. He was a bit of a hoarder. He would buy lots of things. House was always tidy, but he had 4 of everything. Seeing how that influenced my father's generation, how that has influenced our generation, it all has flow-on effects. And it's not so much about saying, well, that worldview is wrong. It's more about focusing on, well, what's going to help us the most? What's going to influence your well-being and that of the community overall, which is tapping into that ripple effect that was mentioned as well, which I think is so important.
Yeah. And what is the number one challenge you see people have, and certainly women going through the menopausal phase? What is the biggest one?
Well, I think for a lot of us at many stages, information overload is a big problem. It's so overwhelming. Money, because, there are different angles and different aspects, and there are so many experts out there. And, possibly if you read the news, I dare say in every single news feed, there's something about money. There's something you should be doing, or it's something else to consider. So on top of that, for women in that age group, they are so busy a lot of the time, and there's a lot to consider. They've got some have children, most have parents, all have parents, unless they've obviously passed away or about to be struggling with their own health issues, relationships, that often, just in the thick of life. So to compound the overwhelm, I think that's often a lot of the challenge, which is certainly not insurmountable. In fact, I would say we can sometimes find that so overwhelming that we don't start to take any action at all. Whereas the beauty of just starting and taking small actions, obviously getting some help is something that I would advocate for. But step by step, you can start to turn things around and not feel like it's something in the back of your mind that's sort of pulling on you. That's just one more thing to do.
Yeah. And do you have any recommendations on how people can start looking at it? Because I hear a lot of people say, oh, I don't trust financial planners, because there have been some that weren't even in institutions. So what is the first step that you would recommend someone takes?
Well, the very first step, I'm a big fan of breaking it down and making it small, because when we start to gain that those small steps, we start to gain that confidence and that knowledge that we're actually on the right path, as opposed to sort of sweeping it under the carpet or getting to it one day. It's starting with the small things. So I break it down so small that we actually start with something that doesn't even involve making any changes at all. It is simply bringing awareness to how we're interacting with money. So when you're making a purchase, for example, what is it that's driving that purchase? What is it that you're hoping to gain out of that purchase? And how does it make you feel? I'd encourage even, a journal, just to jot that down, just to have an idea. And when you make that purchase, what are you feeling? When a lot of the time people at the checkouts will say, would you like a receipt for that? You can say yes or no. But even that question, if that triggers a connection with, okay, why am I buying it? And how do I feel about it? We can start to focus on factors that will help us in our relationship.
Say thank you to Kath. She said she loves the conversations. Great work, you two.
Thank you
Kath.
so much, Kath.
Love to have you here.
Thanks for joining. Yeah, so bringing that awareness and, if gratitude is something that you want to cultivate to have a healthier relationship to money, that's something that you can use as a trigger, is to think, I'm so grateful. Even if you had to scrape the bottom of the barrel to buy whatever it was, maybe it's groceries, I'm so grateful that I had that money there so that I could buy groceries for the week. And that really starts to change how we're interacting with money.
Yeah. Yes, it's it can be a burden, and it can be a delight to have a bit of money in the bank or not. And I've heard someone say the other day, oh, I don't need to keep investing. I don't need to invest. Other people need money as well. And I've said to her, you have every right to look after yourself, and other people will look after themselves if they have the capacity to do it. So with financial security for women going through menopause and having some issues maybe with relationships, how would you guide them to, if the relationship breaks down, guide them how to look after themselves?
Yeah. So, you know what? I think that was a really good flow on, because the example you gave of that previous person saying, about not investing, it can be about looking after yourself. So when it comes to relationship breakdown, a lot of the time it's an emotional experience. So for some people, the emotions are actually after the breakdown, the emotions start to settle, because prior to the relationship, there's been so much, or to the ending of the relationship, there's been so much. Should I leave? Should I stay? It's difficult. What will I do? And a lot of that sort of pre-emotional turmoil starts to dissipate. And then for a lot of people, it actually intensifies. It was relatively stable and it intensifies. And the reason that I mention emotions is because in a perfect world, which we unfortunately, we've got constraints of reality. In a perfect world, we would be making financial decisions when our emotions are calm and we've processed everything. So looking after yourself involves helping you to work through those emotions as much as possible and protecting yourself. When a relationship breaks down, you never really quite know what to expect from the other party. There's finances, there's bank accounts, there's homes, there's children involved. Everybody's emotions can go all over the place. So protecting yourself with things like converting bank accounts to sign getting information on all of your assets and liabilities, knowing your financial situation, having an idea of any, being able to access savings if you need to quickly without, and this is where the challenge lies, without escalating. Because if you escalate, then, and I know, there's many parties involved and you certainly can't control everything. But escalating can put you at more risk. So if you can try to avoid escalating. So protect yourself and those emotions where possible. Work through them, seek help, get advice from people who are genuinely wanting to seek the best outcome for you and for everyone involved, without, having an agenda of spending the most on legal fees at court.
Yeah. You take that away from raising your children.
Yes.
Now, this is wonderful information, Danielle.
Oh, thank you. Well, now when you mentioned that, you triggered in my mind the concept of values, because whatever your values are, even in the most tumultuous of times, if you can connect to your values and you know what's most important, and you do unfortunately have to make decisions at an emotional time, if you're able to connect with what's most important to you, then that's going to make it easier when finances are involved and there are trade-offs and there's concessions and negotiations and things like that. Being clear on what is most important to you, and that you can go to bed and sleep at night knowing you did the best you possibly could, that's going to give you a lot of strength. And I think it's so important to know it is never over. You can always pick yourself up again, and there are always options, possibilities, potentials. You can build wealth, you can work with what you have, and you can move forward.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. And taking a deep breath when we feel stressed is also very important. Because it helps us to relax more. So what are you working on at the moment that may be useful?
So I'm working on a few things. I am working on, I do a lot of financial planning still, and I do a lot of coaching one-on-one, and often with couples as well, because, couples inevitably, my parents were not all that atypical, although it was possibly a bit more obvious than some. A lot of couples do have different money perspectives. So working through that with a lot of couples. Also, I am launching a membership which is aimed predominantly at business owners at the moment, around, helping them to build wealth, building business, and having that healthy relationship to money. That will build out to individuals in the future. So, for individuals, if you're interested, send me an email. I'm very big on catering needs, particularly with, it's always important to sort of have frameworks and to have ideas, but it's important to consider what are the actual needs that you need to work through. So, yeah.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Danielle. For me, it was very informational.
Thank you.
And I believe it is useful for everyone, but certainly because we're in the menopause group, I believe it is very useful for women as well, going through a stage in their lives where they deal with so many different changes, emotions. So it's nice to know that there's someone out there supporting the whole picture, really. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And anyone watching live, please say live. It's a bit late to say that, but if you watch the replay, please put in #replay. And Danielle, please put a link in the comment below how people can contact you.
Sure can.
Yeah, great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anne. And, kudos to you. I love your focus on helping women, your holistic approach, the focus on the impacts of menopause on the whole body and well-being overall. And I know that you are so helpful, and I know that you're coming from such a place of giving. So thank you very much.
Thank you for mentioning that. I'm doing my best.
We all are. And that's what is going to help all of us to grow together.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
everything you offer. And
Likewise.
we'll talk in your group next time.
That would be wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, you take care. And yes, we'll be back.
Great. And good to be prepared. And yes, it's good to be prepared, Kath, indeed. Think ahead of time.
Yes. Yeah. What Kath said is spot on. Pay attention
totally.
to your finances.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.